Is there a millennial exodus? A millennial exodus. Is there one? To start, let me give you a warning. You might be offended by this video. Well, unless you are a millennial or a Gen Zer. The full question is there a millennial exodus from the church and from Christianity? Now, don't expect me to trash talk millennials. Not going to happen. My millennial problem is not with millennials. It's with the church, particularly with the church's negative influence on them. I'm going to focus in this video on my issues with today's church based on the facts about the millennial exodus. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go back to the church of 30 years ago. After all, it created today's church. And I'm not suggesting singing only old hymns. Some of them are as bad as today's mindless repetition. And I'm not suggesting that men should wear shirts and ties and women mid-calf dresses to church. And I'm not suggesting that pastors pound on the pulpit and lambaste us like some did years ago. That doesn't work today any more than today's middle-aged pastor dressed like a 19-year-old giving a shallow pep talk about Jesus wanting you to be yourself. Think about that statement. What I am suggesting is that today's church has likely passed the tipping point when it comes to driving millennials away from the church. Past the tipping point. And if you think they're coming back once they have kids, think about this. With school debt, employment difficulties, high housing costs, and poor marriage models, they're not getting married, if they do, until they're around 30, and not having kids until their mid-30s. By that time, they'll be gone from church for 15 or more years. Unless something changes, they're not coming back to what drove them away. Is there a millennial exodus from the church? Yes. It's already happened. And that's not my opinion, it's fact. I've researched it. It's well documented from a variety of reliable sources. Millennials have left the church in droves. You see, if they stuck with their church and youth group through high school, and many did not, a huge number bailed out as soon as they graduated. There are exceptions, but what I just said is true for the majority. It's fact. In the last few decades, the church tried to encourage, exhort, and entertain millennials to believe, behave, and belong, but never equipped them to do so. That's a very important statement. Here it is again. Listen carefully. The church tried to encourage, exhort, and entertain millennials to believe, behave, and belong, but never equipped them to do so. First, the youth group became a pep rally where belonging to the group became the measure of one's spirituality. And that quasi-spirituality was spurred on by the tyranny of the herd. Then the church's main service morphed into pretty much the same thing. Religious symbols were removed from the buildings. Come as you are, but come reverently was replaced by come dressed like you're going to work in the yard or going on a picnic. And meaningful music with thought-provoking lyrics was replaced by mediocre to bad rock music with almost sometimes endless repetition. You see, doctrine-laced music was replaced by deafening decibels. Why did the church do this? Well, the motivation was to keep or bring back millennials. The thought was, let's make the church as attractive to them as possible by making it as much like their world as possible. As much like their world as possible? But it didn't work. It drove millennials away. And it drove many in my generation away. Paraphrasing what a well-known pastor said about the graying pillars of the church, like me, this is what he said. It's a quote. You know what pillars do. They hold things up, lose them. That's a true statement. That's actually what he said, but that's for a different video. Let's get back to the millennial exodus. If you're a driven away millennial, you may be thinking, wow, someone finally sees it and admits it. You're right, I do. The millennials I talk with tell me that I'm describing their church experience. And many of you post-millennial seeker church people, post-millennial seeker church people, disagree with me. I know that. However, the facts are with me, not with you. The facts speak for themselves. I discussed this lack of equipping with a middle-aged man in a big church in my city. He said his pastor wasn't a pep rally preacher. His pastor was a great teacher. I asked him, I like to cause trouble. I asked him what the pastor's sermon had been about 2 weeks earlier. This is his answer. He said, and then with relief said, faith. I asked him what this pastor said about faith, and his answer again was, he was for it. I rest my case. And at another popular church in town, on Easter, following ear-splitting, overamped, discordant, bad rock music, the middle-aged, unshaven pastor appeared on stage wearing a wrinkled plaid shirt, skinny jeans, and tennis shoes, unsuccessfully trying to look like a millennial. And I'm not making this up. He sat on a tall stool and read Dr. Seuss's Yertle the Turtle to us. And I can tell you, it made me gag. I wanted to run out the back door and take every millennial in the place with me. Now consider this. Millennials have been surveyed. De-churched millennials have said, they've said why they left the church. Listen to what they've said. This isn't me, it's them. Here are their reasons, some of their reasons. They were never really taught the Bible. They felt like church was just a well-orchestrated show. They felt there was no reverence for God in the leaders, the building, the message, or the music. They found no true spirituality. They came looking for God. They did, but couldn't find him. It seemed like the guest of honor, God, was a no-show at the services. And they came looking for 24/7 spiritual life and family, but only found a weekend event that had been squeezed into the world's mold. Their words, not mine. Now, Romans 12:1 and 2 is where the Apostle Paul wrote this. He wrote, "Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed," here it is, "do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect." Today, many churches don't have to worry about the world squeezing them into the world's mold. Those churches did it to themselves. Now listen carefully. If you are a disappointed, driven away, de-churched millennial, don't do to yourself what many churches have done to themselves. Don't be conformed to this world. Be transformed. Seek the true God. Don't just seek spirituality for the sake of spirituality. If you do, you may find yourself in a very bad place, actually a dangerous place. Seek the true God of the Bible. Seek a relationship with Jesus Christ. And search the Bible. It's the one proven book that's from God, not just about God. The two websites linked from the justaquestion.org homepage may be able to help you. So check out 911god.org and discipleorbeliever.org. That's 911god.org and discipleorbeliever.org. And I'll tell you, there's more to say on this subject. So be sure to watch the videos, Do You Want to Leave Too? And Are You Lost in the House? They're in the justaquestion.org library of videos. That's Do You Want to Leave Too? And Are You Lost in the house. I'm John Morris, and this has been Just a Question.